Maria Sanchez woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of her alarm clock, as she had done every weekday for the past 4 years. Her apartment in the Pine Ridge Apartments complex was modest but cozy. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living room overlooking the parking lot. At 28, she had grown accustomed to the steady life of a working woman in Muskegon. The city was waking up slowly. From her kitchen window, Maria could see her neighbors hurriedly getting into their cars and heading to the Whirlpool and Johnson Controls factories, which employed most of the population. She herself worked at Mercy Health Muskegon, one of the largest medical centers in the county. While making coffee, Maria checked her phone. A message from Erwin Miller had arrived half an hour ago. "Good morning, beautiful. Free after 6 today. Same place?" She paused over the keyboard, considering her reply. Erwin owned Miller's Auto Repair on East Street, just a few blocks from the hospital. 32 years old, married, 2 children. Their relationship had been going on for 18 months, and Maria still marveled at how easily she had slipped into the role of the other woman. "Maybe. I have a long shift today," she replied, leaving herself room to maneuver as always. The drive to the hospital took 20 minutes. Maria loved morning drives. The city wasn't fully awake yet. Traffic was light, and Lake Michigan created a special atmosphere of freshness. Muskegon was located right on the shore, and even in the industrial areas, you could smell the water. Waiting for her at the hospital was Susan Davis, a colleague and the only person she could call a friend at work. "Maria, how are you? You look rested," Susan said, checking the shift schedule. "I went to bed early last night. Sometimes that helps," Maria replied, putting on her uniform. It was true, but not the whole truth. She had gone to bed early the night before, but only after spending 3 hours with Erwin at a motel on the outskirts of town. He told her about his family problems. His wife Jane was becoming increasingly suspicious, his children were demanding more attention, and his business was struggling due to competition from large chain auto repair shops. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life," Erwin said, lying next to her on the narrow bed. "I got married at 22, became a father at 24. I never had time to think about what I really wanted." Maria listened, stroking his chest. Erwin was an attractive man, tall, broad-shouldered, with the hands of a mechanic and attentive brown eyes. But what attracted her most was his honesty about his own contradictions. He didn't try to justify his infidelity or portray himself as a victim of circumstances. He simply acknowledged that he was confused. The first half of the workday passed as usual. Maria worked in the emergency room, where she dealt with a variety of cases every day, from simple cuts to serious injuries. She was valued for her calmness in critical situations and her ability to find an approach to any patient. During her lunch break, she was sitting in the hospital cafeteria when Deputy Sheriff Gerald Wilson approached her. He was in uniform, which meant he was on duty. "Hi, Maria. Can I sit down?" he asked, holding a cup of coffee in his hands. "Sure," she replied, feeling her heart beat faster. Gerald had come into her life 8 months ago by chance. He had brought a detainee to the hospital who had been injured during his arrest and stayed while Maria treated the man's arm. Their first conversation was professional, but something about Gerald's seriousness, the way he approached his work, intrigued her. Unlike Erwin, who was a tired family man, Gerald radiated energy and ambition. At 29, he dreamed of becoming the county sheriff and was already studying law at a local college. His plans were grand: to reform law enforcement, fight corruption, and make Muskegon safer. "How's it going?" he asked, sitting down across from her. "Fine. Are you off duty?" "No, I'm patrolling the hospital area. There have been reports of drug dealers in the park across the street." Gerald took a sip of his coffee and looked at her intently. "Listen, I wanted to ask if we could meet up tonight. I know a nice place." Maria felt a familiar tightness in her chest. Erwin was waiting for her at 6, and Gerald was asking her out for the same evening. "Jerry, I'm not sure. I had a hard shift today. I might just go home and go to bed early." Disappointment flashed in his eyes, but he nodded understandingly. "Sure, you work a lot. Maybe this weekend?" "Maybe," she replied evasively. After Gerald left, Maria remained sitting in the cafeteria, thinking about what her life had become. A year and a half ago, She was an ordinary single nurse who dated men from time to time, but wasn't in a serious relationship with anyone. Now she was balancing between two men, each of whom considered their relationship special. The problem was that both were right. With Erwin, she had a passion based on forbidden love and a mutual understanding of the complexities of adult life. With Gerald, she had enthusiasm and plans for a future that could be completely different. The second half of her shift went by quickly. Maria took in a patient with suspected appendicitis, helped Dr. Raymond stitch up a deep cut, and advised a family on caring for an elderly relative after a stroke. At 6 in the evening, she changed into her civilian clothes and drove to the Restful Inn motel on the outskirts of Muskegon. It was her and Irvin's usual meeting place, far enough from the city center to reduce the risk of being recognized, but close enough so they didn't have to spend a lot of time driving. Irvin was already waiting for her in room 15. When she entered, he embraced her, and Maria smelled the scent of motor oil that had soaked into his skin despite his shower. "How was your day?" he asked, kissing her neck. "Normal. How about yours?" Jane asked why I've been staying late at work lately. Irwin stepped back and looked at her seriously. "I think she suspects something." Maria felt a familiar chill of fear. Irwin's wife was a high school teacher, and, according to him, a very observant woman. "What did you tell her?" "That we have a lot of orders, that we have to work late to keep all our customers happy." Irwin sat down on the edge of the bed. "Maria, sometimes I feel like we're playing with fire." "Do you want to end it?" she asked, sitting down next to him. He shook his head. Hell no. You're the only good thing that's happened to me in years. It's just that sometimes I think about what would happen if everything came out." Maria knew what would happen. Divorce, scandal, loss of children. For her, a ruined reputation in a small town where everyone knew everyone else. Perhaps the need to look for work elsewhere. They spent 2 hours together. They talked about work, about plans for the future that they both knew were unrealistic, and they made love with the desperation of people who know they are living on borrowed time. When Maria returned home at 8:30, there was a message from Gerald waiting for her. "Hope you had a good rest. Thinking of you." She didn't reply right away. Instead, she took a shower, trying to wash away the guilt and the smell of someone else's cologne. The bathroom mirror reflected the face of a woman who looked tired not from work, but from constantly balancing between lies and truth. Late at night, lying in bed with a book she wasn't reading, Maria thought about how it all began. Her first meeting with Irwin in his workshop when her car broke down. His attention, his thoughtfulness, his ability to listen. The gradual closeness that began with innocent conversations over coffee and led to regular meetings at a motel. With Gerald, everything was different. He appeared at a time when her relationship with Irwin had become routine. Gerald represented the possibility of a different life, a life with a man who had no obligations to another family. But now, 8 months later, Maria realized that she had created a situation that could not go on forever. In a town the size of Muskegon, about 60,000 people, secrets have a way of becoming public knowledge, especially when one of the men works in law enforcement and the other owns a business in the town center. As she fell asleep, Maria had no idea that in a few days her carefully constructed world would collapse, and the price for her double life would be much higher than she could have imagined. The weekend in Muskegon began early. On Saturday morning, Maria woke up to the sound of her neighbor's lawnmower and realized she had slept until 9, a rare luxury for a nurse who worked shifts. She had 2 days off, and every man in her life wanted to spend time with her. Checking her phone, she found 3 messages. The first was from Irwin. "Jane took the kids to her mom's for the day. We can meet anytime." The second was from Gerald. "Good morning. I have the day off. I wanted to invite you to lunch at a new restaurant on the waterfront." The third message was from an unknown number. "Maria, this is Jane Miller. We need to talk." Maria's heart sank. Jane Miller was Irwin's wife. How did she get her number? And more importantly, what did she know? Maria slowly got out of bed, feeling adrenaline rush through her veins. She sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the message for several minutes, trying to figure out how to respond. Ignoring it was dangerous. If Jane suspected something, silence would only fuel her suspicions. But responding also meant entering unfamiliar territory. Finally, she wrote, "Hello, Mrs. Miller. What did you want to talk about?" The reply came a minute later. In person. Morning Brew Cafe on West Street in an hour. Come alone. Maria took a quick shower and dressed in jeans and a simple blouse. Nothing provocative or attention-grabbing. The Morning Brew Cafe was located in the business district of the city, busy enough that the conversation wouldn't seem too intimate, but quiet enough for a serious talk. Jane Miller was already sitting at a table by the window when Maria arrived. 30 years old, of average height, with chestnut hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. She looked exactly how Maria had imagined Erwin's wife, a respectable schoolteacher and caring mother. She was wearing a simple blue dress and a wedding ring, which she was nervously twirling on her finger. "Thank you for coming," Jane said when Maria sat down across from her. Her voice was calm, but Maria detected a steely undertone. "How did you get my number?" Maria asked. "Erwin left his phone at home yesterday morning. Your number was on the list of recent calls." Jane paused. "Several times." The waitress came over to take their order, but Jane waved her away. "I don't want anything. Would you like something?" "Coffee," Maria said, realizing this would be a short conversation. When the waitress left, Jane looked Maria straight in the eye. "I know you're having an affair with my husband." Maria felt the world around her slow down. She could deny it, demand proof, feign outrage. But something about Jane's directness made her choose honesty. "Yes," she said quietly. Jane nodded as if the confirmation came as no surprise. "How long?" "A year and a half." "A year and a half," Jane repeated, and there was bitterness in her voice. "So before Emily was born." "No, wait. Emily is 5. So when Sammy turned 6. Maria was silent. What could she say in such a situation? "You know he's married, right?" Jane continued. "I know. He has 2 children." "I know." "And you don't care?" Maria looked out the cafe window at the usual Muskegon residents going about their Saturday business, shopping, family dinners, visiting friends, the simple, honest life she had complicated with her decisions. "It's complicated," she said finally. "Complicated?" Jane leaned forward. "Complicated for you? How do you think it is for me? For 7 years I thought I was in a happy marriage. For the past year and a half, my husband has been lying to me every day. He comes home and kisses me with the same lips he kissed you with." Jane's words were painful because they were true. Maria had never allowed herself to think of Erwin's wife as a real person with feelings and a right to honesty. "What do you want from me?" Maria asked. "To stop. And if I refuse, then I'll tell everyone. Your colleagues at the hospital, his clients, the whole town." Jane paused. "I have photos, Maria. Your cars next to the motel. You going into the room together." Maria felt a chill in her stomach. "You've been following us?" "For the last 2 months. A private investigator cost me our vacation savings, but now I know the truth." The waitress brought Maria her coffee. She took a sip mechanically, trying to collect her thoughts. "You have until Monday to think about it," Jane said, getting up. "If you don't stop seeing my husband by Monday, the photos will be made public." After Jane left, Maria sat in the cafe for another half hour, mechanically stirring her cold coffee. Her carefully constructed world was beginning to crumble, but the worst part was that somewhere deep down, she felt relieved. The secret had become a heavy burden, and the prospect of revealing it was frightening, but at the same time, liberating. Her phone vibrated again. A message from Gerald. "Still waiting for your answer about lunch. Hope everything's okay." Maria realized she couldn't put off her decision about Gerald any longer. If her relationship with Erwin was ending, maybe it was time to focus on the man who could offer her a future without deception. She texted back, "Sorry for the delay. Lunch sounds great. Where are we meeting?" The Lakeside Grill was a new restaurant on the shore of Lake Michigan. Gerald chose a table with a view of the water, and when Maria arrived, he was already studying the menu. "You look great," he said, standing up to kiss her on the cheek. Gerald was dressed casually in dark jeans and a blue shirt that accentuated his eyes. At 29, he was in excellent physical shape, as required for his job in law enforcement. His attractiveness was different from Erwin's, less rough, more polished. "Thanks, you too," Maria replied, sitting down across from him. They ordered food and wine. Gerald talked about his plans for the weekend, studying, working out at the gym, having dinner with his parents. "What are your plans?" he asked. "Nothing special, rest, reading, maybe cleaning the apartment." "Sounds relaxing. You know, sometimes I think you work too much. When was the last time you took a real vacation?" Maria thought about it. "Probably last summer. I went to visit my sister in Chicago for a week. We need to fix that. Maybe we could go somewhere together. It doesn't have to be far. Traverse City, for example. It has beautiful beaches and good restaurants." Gerald's suggestion to go on vacation together was a big step in their relationship. Until now, they had only seen each other for a few hours at a time, lunches, dinners, sometimes movies. A trip together would mean taking their relationship to a new level of intimacy. "That sounds nice," Maria said cautiously, "but I need to check my work schedule." "Sure, think about it." During dinner, Gerald talked about his work with an enthusiasm that Maria found both attractive and naive. He talked about his plans to reform the justice system in the county, the corruption he had seen among his senior colleagues, and his desire to make Muskegon safer. "You know what upsets me the most?" he said, cutting into his steak. "People have lost faith in law enforcement, and in many ways they're right. Too many cops think the law doesn't apply to them." "And you never break the rules?" Maria asked, understanding the irony of the situation. She was dating the deputy sheriff while hiding her relationship with a married man from him. "I try not to. Of course, sometimes I have to speed for work," he smiled. "But not for anything serious. Honesty is the foundation of everything." After lunch, they took a walk along the waterfront. Lake Michigan was calm, the autumn sun reflecting off the water. Other couples and families were enjoying their day off, and Maria felt how nice it was to be part of this normal, open life. "Maria," Gerald said, stopping at the railing. "I want to tell you something important." She turned to him, feeling her heart begin to beat faster. "I think something serious is happening between us. I'm not talking about love. It's too early for that, but I feel a connection that I've never felt with anyone before." Maria looked at his sincere face and felt both warmth and guilt. Gerald deserved honesty, but she couldn't give it to him without destroying everything. "I feel it too," she said, and it was true. "Good, because I want us to be honest with each other, completely honest. Secrets destroy relationships." Those words hit Maria like a slap in the face. Gerald was preaching exactly what she couldn't give him. "You're right," she said in a weak voice. When she got home that evening, Maria found a missed call from Erwin and a voicemail message. "Hi, baby. Jane came home earlier than expected. She's acting strange, asking a lot of questions about work. I think she suspects something. Call me when you can." Maria didn't call back. Instead, she sat by the window of her apartment and watched the city fall asleep. Streetlights began to come on, and the warm glow of family dinners and evening television programs appeared in the windows of houses. She thought about her conversation with Jane that morning and her lunch with Gerald that afternoon. Two people who demanded honesty from her in different ways. Jane was direct and harsh, threatening exposure. Gerald was gentle and loving, believing in their future together. The phone rang again. This time it was Erwin. "Hello," she answered. "Maria, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. We need to talk." "Yes, we do." "Something happened? You sound strange." Maria closed her eyes. "Erwin, your wife knows about us." A long pause. "What?" "She met me this morning. She has photos. She hired a private investigator." Damn it! Erwin's voice was panicked. "What did she say?" "That I have until Monday to end our relationship. Otherwise, she'll tell everyone." "Maria, listen to me. Don't panic. We can work this out. I'll talk to her. Explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to her every day for a year and a half?" "I don't know, but we'll think of something. I can't lose you." Maria heard the desperation in his voice and realized that Erwin was afraid not only of losing her, but also of destroying his family, his business, and the entire life he had built. "Maybe it's time to stop," she said quietly. "Number Maria, numero. We'll find a way. Let's meet tomorrow and discuss everything." I don't know, Erwin. I need time to think. After she hung up, Maria lay down on the sofa and closed her eyes. Tomorrow was Sunday, the last day before Jane's ultimatum. The last day she could make a decision that would change the lives of everyone involved in this complicated game. She didn't know that at the same time, in another part of town, Gerald Wilson was studying work files and stumbled upon a report about a private investigator who was following a cheating couple. The client's name was Jane Miller, and among the photos in the file was a woman who looked familiar to him. Sunday morning in Muskegon began with fog rising from Lake Michigan. Maria woke up earlier than usual and lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the events of the previous day. Jane had less than 24 hours left before her ultimatum expired. Her phone was silent. Neither Erwin nor Gerald had been in touch yet. She was grateful for the respite, which allowed her to gather her thoughts without external pressure. After making coffee, Maria sat down at the kitchen window and watched Sunday life in her neighborhood. Families gathered in their cars, heading to church. Children played in the yards under the watchful eyes of their parents. The ordinary, honest life she once had and lost in the maze of her own deception. At 9:30, the phone rang. It was Erwin. "Good morning," she said, answering the call. "Maria, I need to see you. Today." His voice sounded tired and desperate. "I haven't slept all night thinking about what Jane said. We need a plan. Erwin, maybe we should just accept her terms." "No!" His voice became sharp. "I can't lose you. You don't understand. You're the only one who makes me feel alive. Without you, I'm just a husband and father who works in a garage until he's old." Maria heard not only love in his words, but also fear of the ordinary life that seemed like a prison to him. "Where can we meet?" she asked, realizing that a motel was now out of the question. "Muskegon State Park, by the old lighthouse. No one will be there at this time of day." The state park was a few miles outside of town, on the shore of a lake. Maria agreed to meet him in an hour. The drive to the park took 20 minutes. The fog was lifting, revealing a clear autumn sky. On Sunday morning, the park was practically empty, just a few joggers and dog walkers. Erwin was already waiting near the old lighthouse, built in the 1850s. He looked tired and disheveled, nothing like the confident mechanic she knew. "Thanks for coming," he said, hugging her. They walked over to a bench overlooking the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the clouds. "I've been thinking all night," Erwin began. "We have options. We can leave here. Together. I'll sell the workshop and you can find a job in another city." "What about your children?" "Jane will get a good share of the proceeds from the sale of the business. I'll pay child support. The children will see me on weekends." Maria looked at him in surprise. "Are you seriously suggesting that you destroy your family for the sake of our relationship?" "The family is already broken, Maria. Jane will never forgive me. The children are young, they'll get used to it." "Erwin, listen to yourself. You're talking about leaving a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old for a woman you've been seeing secretly for a year and a half. For love," he corrected her. "I love you, Maria, more than I ever loved Jane." Those words should have made her happy, but instead Maria felt the weight of responsibility. Erwin was willing to give up everything for their relationship, but she wasn't sure she was ready to make that sacrifice. "I need time to think," she said. "There's no time. Jane will put her plan into action tomorrow. Then maybe we should let her do it." Erwin grabbed her hands. "Maria, please, don't give me to her. We can be happy." She saw the desperation in his eyes and knew he wasn't ready to let their relationship go. To him, she had become more than just a lover. She was a symbol of freedom from the responsibilities and obligations that had weighed on him for years. After an hour of talking, they still couldn't come to a decision. Erwin insisted on running away. Maria hesitated. They agreed to meet tomorrow morning before work to make a final decision. When she got home, Maria found a message from Gerald. "Hi, great lunch yesterday. Want to see you today? Maybe a movie?" She looked at the time. It was 2:30. A movie meant several hours in a dark theater where she wouldn't have to talk or explain her mood. "Good idea." "What's on?" she replied. They met at the Celebration Cinema in the shopping center. Gerald chose a thriller, something about spies and international intrigue. Maria was grateful for the choice, which required minimal emotional involvement. During the movie, Gerald took her hand, and Maria felt how pleasant this simple closeness was, without secrets or fear of being noticed. With Erwin, every touch in public was a risk. After the movie, they went to a cafe in the same shopping center. Gerald was in a good mood, telling jokes about work and his plans for the week. "You know what's strange?" he said, stirring his coffee. "Yesterday I was looking through some old files in the archive and came across some material from a private investigator. Jane Miller hired him to follow her husband." Maria felt the blood drain from her face. "Really?" "Yeah, classic case of marital infidelity. The guy's been having an affair for over a year. His wife gathered evidence and is now preparing for a divorce." "That's sad," Maria said, trying to remain calm. "The interesting thing is that the mistress works at the hospital. She's a nurse." Gerald looked at her. "Imagine how small the world is. You probably know her." Maria's heart was beating so loudly that she thought Gerald must be able to hear it. "Maybe. What's her name?" "Maria Sanchez." Time stood still. Gerald looked at her curiously, waiting for a reaction. Maria knew that the next few seconds would determine whether her deception would be revealed right now. "I don't know her," she lied, surprised at how calm her voice sounded. "That's strange. I thought everyone knew each other at the hospital." "There are a lot of people who work there. Maybe she's in a different department." Gerald nodded and changed the subject, but Maria could see that he had noticed her reaction. The deputy sheriff was used to noticing details and analyzing people's behavior. The rest of the evening was tense. Maria tried to act natural, but she could feel Gerald studying her. When he walked her to her car, she was sure he suspected something. "Maria," he said before she got in the car, "you seem strange today. Is everything okay?" "Just tired. It's been a tough week at work." He kissed her on the cheek. "Get some rest. See you in the week." At home, Maria sat down at her computer and started searching for information on the internet. If Gerald had access to the private investigator's files, he would soon have the photos. She was clearly visible in some of them. Her phone rang. It was Susan from work. "Hi, Maria. Sorry to bother you on your day off, but we're having an inspection from the hospital administration tomorrow. We need to make sure all the paperwork is in order." "What kind of inspection?" "Something related to ethics and professional conduct. I don't know the details, but Administrator Wilson will be asking questions of all the staff." After the call, Maria realized that the walls were really closing in on her. Jane's ultimatum, Gerald's suspicions, and now an inspection at the hospital. Too many coincidences for one day. At 9:30 in the evening, Erwin called. "Jane's been silent all afternoon," he said without greeting her. "She's barely even noticed the children. I think she's preparing for tomorrow." "Erwin, I've been thinking about your suggestion that we leave. And? It's crazy. You can't abandon the children. So you're taking her side? I'm choosing common sense." A long pause. "Maria, if you leave me, I don't know what I'll do." There was a threat in his voice, veiled as a plea. Maria realized that Erwin was not ready to accept the end of their relationship. "We'll talk tomorrow morning," as agreed. "Yes, tomorrow morning." After he hung up, Maria sat in the darkness of her apartment for a long time. Outside, Muskegon was falling asleep. The lights in the houses were going out, the streets were emptying, and the city was preparing for a new work week. She thought about how, in a year and a half, she had grown accustomed to her double life. In the morning, she was a professional nurse trusted by her patients and colleagues. In the afternoon, she was the mistress of a married man, meeting him in cheap motels. In the evening, she was the girlfriend of an ambitious deputy sheriff who dreamed of an honest life and justice. Each role required different qualities, different behavior, different words. She had become an actress in her own life, but now all the roles were beginning to overlap, creating irresolvable contradictions. Maria got up and went to the window. It was quiet outside, with only the occasional car passing by. Somewhere in this city, Jane Miller was preparing for the next day, perhaps rehearsing phone calls and making a list of people to tell about her husband's infidelity. In another part of town, Gerald Wilson was probably studying case files, trying to understand why the name Maria Sanchez sounded familiar to him, and Erwin sat in his house, where his wife avoided conversation and his children slept, unaware that their family could be torn apart tomorrow. They were all connected by invisible threads of lies and secrets that Maria had woven over the past year and a half. Tomorrow, those threads would begin to snap, and she didn't know what would be left when the web finally collapsed. Before going to bed, Maria checked her phone again. No new messages. The calm before the storm that was to break tomorrow. She went to bed, but sleep would not come. Her thoughts revolved around possible scenarios for the next day. Meeting with Erwin in the morning, work at the hospital under the watchful eye of the administration, a possible call from Jane, or even worse, from Gerald with questions about the photos from the case. At 3 a.m, Maria finally fell asleep, but her sleep was restless, full of nightmares about exposure and the consequences. She didn't know that this was the last night of her life when the secrets would remain secrets. In another part of town, Gerald Wilson couldn't sleep for a different reason. Something about Maria's reaction to the mention of the Miller case had alerted his professional instincts. He got out of bed and retrieved his work tablet, where he kept copies of the photos from the private investigator's file. Turning on his desk lamp, he began to study the photos closely. A middle-aged man, obviously Erwin Miller, and a woman. Gerald zoomed in on the image on the screen and felt his stomach clench. Monday began with cold rain that turned the streets of Muskegon into gray streams of water and fallen leaves. Maria woke up at 5 a.m. to the sound of raindrops drumming on the window and immediately remembered that today was the day when everything was supposed to be decided. Jane's ultimatum was set to expire at noon. The meeting with Erwin was scheduled for 7 a.m. in the park near the hospital. Her shift started at 8, and Maria hoped to resolve the situation with Erwin quickly before the workday began. As she got ready to leave, she checked her phone several times. There were no messages from Gerald since last night, which was unusual. He usually texted before bed or early in the morning. Maria hoped he was just busy with work. The drive to the hospital took longer than usual because of the rain. Near Hackley Park, where they had agreed to meet Erwin, Maria parked under an old oak tree. The clock read 6:55 a.m. Erwin was already waiting, standing under the canopy of the playground. He looked as if he hadn't slept all night. Red eyes, unshaven face, rumpled clothes. "Thanks for coming," he said as Maria approached. "We have to end this, Erwin." "Maria, please, hear me out." He took her hands. "I've been thinking all night. I have a plan." "What plan?" "We're leaving today, right now. I've withdrawn all the cash from our accounts and sold the expensive tools from the workshop to a buyer. We have $30,000. Maria looked at him in horror. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. The car is full of gas, our things are packed. We can be in Chicago in 3 hours, and from there we can fly anywhere." "What about your children?" "Jane will get the workshop, the house, everything else. The children will be taken care of." "Erwin, you're talking about stealing money from the family budget." "It's not stealing, it's our savings." Maria took a step back. "Ours?" "Erwin, you've lost your mind. I can't leave my job, my life, everything for what? For love? For happiness? For a fantasy," she shouted. "You live in a fantasy where you can abandon your family and children, steal money, and start a new life." Erwin's face darkened. "So you're choosing him." "Who's him?" "The cop. You think I don't know?" Erwin took a step closer. "You think I'm blind? Gerald Wilson. I saw you two having lunch at the restaurant on the waterfront." Maria felt the world around her begin to crumble. "Erwin. For a year and a half, I thought you belonged only to me, and all this time you were seeing him." "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." Erwin grabbed her by the shoulders. "You played with both of us, and now that everything's out in the open, you're choosing him. Let me go." "No, I won't let you go to him. I lost my family, my business, everything because of you." Maria tried to break free, but Erwin held her tight. His eyes were crazy, full of rage and despair. "Erwin, you're making a mistake." "The mistake was trusting you." At that moment, Gerald Wilson appeared from behind the trees. He was in uniform, his hand on his holster. "Let her go, Miller," he said in a calm but authoritative voice. Erwin turned around, still holding Maria. "Here comes your hero." "Jerry, how did you find us?" Maria asked. "I've been following you since this morning. I saw the photos from the case, Maria. I know the whole truth." Gerald slowly approached, one hand ready to grab his gun, the other making a gesture of reconciliation. "Miller, this isn't the way out. Let her go and we'll talk about it calmly." "Talk about it?" Irwin laughed bitterly. "What is there to talk about? She cheated on both of us. She played us like puppets." "Maybe, but that's no reason for violence." "Violence?" Irwin looked at his hands, still clenched around Maria's shoulders, and loosened his grip slightly. "I'm not going to hurt her. I love her." "Explain?" His voice was cold. "Explain how you lied to me for a year and a half? How you dated a married man while making plans for a future with me? It's complicated." "No, Maria, it's simple. You're a liar." Gerald's words hurt her more than Irwin's screams. There was no anger in his voice, only the cold disappointment of a man who had believed a lie. "You're both idiots," Irwin said. "Can't you see what she's like? She doesn't love either of us. We're just toys to her." "That's not true," Maria cried. "I didn't want it to be like this." "But it is," Gerald said. "So what now? Do we keep playing this game?" "No," Irwin replied. "The game is over." He abruptly let go of Maria and took a few steps back. A gun appeared in his hand, an old revolver he kept in his workshop to protect himself from burglars. "Irwin, put that gun away," Gerald ordered, instantly drawing his service pistol. "Or what? Are you going to shoot me?" "If I have to." Maria found herself between two men with guns. The rain intensified, turning the morning into a gray nightmare. "Stop!" she cried. "Stop this madness!" "The madness started a year and a half ago," said Irwin, keeping his gun raised. "When you decided to play with our feelings. I never wanted to hurt anyone." "But you did," said Gerald. "My career, his family, all of us." Irwin laughed hysterically. "Career? You're thinking about your career? I lost my family. Because you cheated on your wife. And you were seeing a liar." Maria saw the situation spiraling out of control. Both men were on the verge of breaking down, the guns in their hands making any careless movement deadly dangerous. "Please," she said, raising her hands. "Let's just go our separate ways, each of us on our own path." "No," Irwin said firmly. "It can't be that simple." He turned the gun toward Maria. "If I can't be with you, then no one can." "Don't you dare!" Gerald shouted, pointing his gun at Irwin. "Jerry, don't!" Maria screamed. It all happened in a matter of seconds. Irwin took a step toward Maria, his finger on the trigger. Gerald shouted, "Stop!" and also moved forward. Maria tried to run away. The first shot came from Irwin. The bullet missed Maria by a few inches, shattering the window of a parked car. Almost simultaneously, Gerald fired, aiming at Irwin's shoulder, but Irwin managed to dodge. In the chaos of screams and gunshots, Maria stumbled over a tree root and fell. When she got up, Irwin was already next to her, his gun pointed directly at her. "If she's not mine, she's no one's," he whispered. Irwin's second shot was accurate. The bullet hit Maria in the chest, and she collapsed onto the wet ground. The last thing she saw was the gray sky from which cold rain was falling. Gerald fired again, this time hitting Irwin in the leg. He fell, dropping his gun, but after a moment he got up and limped toward his car. "Maria!" Gerald rushed to her, pressing his hands against the wound in her chest. Blood seeped through his fingers, mixing with the rainwater. Irwin started the car and sped out of the parking lot, disappearing into the morning fog. Gerald shouted into the radio, calling for an ambulance and giving a description of the fugitive. Maria tried to say something, but only a wheeze came out of her throat. Her eyes were open, but her gaze was becoming more and more vacant. "Hang in there," Gerald whispered. "The ambulance is on its way. Everything will be all right." But they both knew it wasn't true. The bullet had hit too close to the heart, and the bleeding was too severe. Maria Sanchez, a nurse who had saved the lives of others, was dying on the cold ground at the hands of the man who claimed to love her. Ambulance sirens could be heard in the distance, but with every passing second, it became clearer that they were too late. Maria's breathing grew shallower and shallower, her eyes more and more vacant. At 7:23 a.m. on a rainy Monday in Muskegon, Michigan, Maria Sanchez's heart stopped beating. Her double life, full of lies and passion, ended in a park where she met one lover and was killed by another. Gerald sat next to the body, holding her lifeless hand when the ambulance arrived. Paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. The rain continued to fall, washing the blood from the asphalt and turning the scene of the tragedy into an ordinary city park. By 8 in the morning, the park was cordoned off with police tape. Detective Michael Harris arrived at the scene to begin investigating a murder that would rock Muskegon and expose a web of lies, passion, and betrayal that led to this tragedy. Erwin Miller had fled, leaving behind a dead woman, a broken family, and the shattered lives of everyone involved in the story. The hunt for the killer was just beginning. The game Maria had started 18 months earlier had ended in the most tragic way possible. The woman who tried to balance two worlds was ultimately crushed by the weight of her own secrets. At Mercy Health Muskegon Hospital, Maria's colleagues were waiting for her to start her morning shift, unaware that their kind professional nurse would never come to work again. And at the house on Elm Street, Jane Miller was making breakfast for her children, unaware that her husband had gone from being a cheater to a murderer. The rain continued to fall on Muskegon, washing away the last traces of Maria Sanchez's life and setting the stage for an investigation that would expose all the dark secrets hidden behind the facade of a respectable American town. Detective Michael Harris arrived at Hackley Park at 8:15 a.m., just as the rain finally stopped, leaving behind a gray sky and puddles on the asphalt. At 42, he had seen enough crime scenes to immediately understand the seriousness of the situation from the expressions on the faces of the first officers to arrive. "What do we have?" he asked Sergeant Thompson, who was in charge of the cordon. "Murder. The victim is Maria Sanchez, 28 years old, a nurse at Mercy Health Hospital. One gunshot wound to the chest, dead on arrival." Harris approached the body, which was still lying where Maria had fallen. A young woman in the medical uniform she had put on for her morning shift. The blood on her clothes was already beginning to darken. "Witnesses?" 1. Deputy Sheriff Gerald Wilson. He was at the scene when the shot was fired. Harris turned and saw a young officer sitting on a bench near the playground. Gerald was staring into space, his uniform stained with blood. "Is he hurt?" "No. It's the victim's blood. He tried to administer first aid." Harris nodded and approached Gerald. "Officer Wilson? I'm Detective Harris. I need to take your statement." Gerald slowly raised his head. His eyes were red, but his gaze was clear. "The shooter is Erwin Miller, 32 years old, owner of Miller's Auto Repair." "Do you know him?" "I know the whole story." Gerald took a deep breath. "Maria had an affair with Miller, a year and a half. I only found out yesterday." Harris sat down next to him on the bench. "Tell me everything in order." For the next 40 minutes, Gerald recounted the events of that morning in detail. How he found the photos in the private investigator's file. How he realized that Maria was the nurse from the investigation. How he decided to follow her that morning and witnessed her meeting with Erwin. "Miller was in a state of emotional distress," Gerald said. "He said she had ruined his family, that she had played with both of us. When he realized Maria wasn't going to leave with him, he pulled out a gun." "Were you armed too?" "Yes, my service weapon. I tried to stop him, but..." Gerald fell silent. "I didn't have time. He fired first. And then, I shot him in the leg." Miller was limping when he got to his car. A dark blue Ford F-150, Michigan license plate, PLM 2847, Harris wrote down the number. "Has a description been sent out?" "Yes, right after the incident." While Harris questioned Gerald, forensic technicians worked at the crime scene. They found 2 spent shell casings from Erwin's pistol and one from Gerald's service weapon. Blood trails led to the location of the fugitive's car. At 10:30 a.m., a message came over the radio. "Miller's car has been found abandoned in the parking lot of the Lakeside Mall. There's blood on the driver's seat." Harris and a team of officers immediately drove to the scene. The Ford was in the far corner of the parking lot, the doors unlocked, the keys in the ignition. There were drops of blood on the asphalt next to the driver's door. "Looks like he got into another car," Officer Davis said, examining the tracks. "Or someone picked him up," Harris added. "Check the mall's surveillance cameras." While the technicians were working on the car, Harris received a call from Sergeant Thompson. "Detective, we have a problem. Miller's wife has reported her children missing. What? Jane Miller says her husband picked up the children from school an hour ago. He told the administration that they had a family emergency. Harris realized that the situation was getting complicated. Now they weren't just looking for a killer, but a killer with hostages, his own children. Put out an Amber Alert. Erwin Miller, 2 children, Sammy, 7, and Emily, 5. The next few hours were spent in a frenzy of activity. The police searched the Miller's house and the auto repair shop and interviewed relatives and acquaintances. Harris spoke personally with Jane Miller at her home on Elm Street. The 30-year-old woman was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She told the detective the whole story, how she had hired a private investigator, how she had discovered her husband's infidelity, how she had given Maria an ultimatum. "I never thought he was capable of murder," Jane cried. "Erwin wasn't a violent man, just weak." "Mrs. Miller, are there any places where your husband could be hiding with the children? His parents died 10 years ago. He has an uncle in Grand Rapids, but they haven't been in touch for years. Erwin always said that if anything happened, he would go to the lake." "What lake?" "White Lake, an hour's drive from here. His late father had a fishing cabin there. Erwin sometimes went there alone when he wanted to be by himself." Harris immediately organized a trip to the lake. A group of 6 officers left at 3:30 p.m. when the sun finally broke through the clouds, illuminating the road to White Lake. The cabin was located on the shore in a wooded area, away from the main roads. It was an old wooden structure with a crooked porch and boarded-up windows. An unfamiliar car, a white Honda Civic, was parked nearby. "Probably stolen or forced someone to give it to him," Officer Davis commented. Harris ordered his men to surround the cabin. Through a loudspeaker, he addressed the person inside. "Erwin Miller. This is the Muskegon Police Department. Come out with your hands up. The children should not suffer for your actions." There was no response. There was no sound from the cabin. After waiting 20 minutes, Harris decided to go in. The arrest team cautiously approached the door. The lock was broken and the door was ajar. Inside the cabin, they found Erwin Miller sitting in an old chair with a gun in his hand. The wound on his leg was bandaged with a shirt, but it was still bleeding. The children were sleeping on the sofa under a tattered blanket. "Don't come any closer," Erwin said in a weak voice. "I don't want to hurt them." "Then put down your weapon," Harris replied, keeping his gun at the ready. "You don't understand. I've lost everything. My family, my business, the woman I loved. You killed her, Miller. Maria is dead." Erwin closed his eyes. "I know. I didn't want to, but at the last moment I just couldn't stop myself. The children are innocent. Let them go. They're all I have left. If I give them to you, I'll have no reason to live." The negotiations continued for over an hour. Erwin talked about his love for Maria, how she had changed his life, given him hope for something more than the daily routine of a family man. "She was the light in my gray life," he said. "And when I realized I was going to lose her, that she would choose him over me. Wilson isn't to blame for your problems. He stole her from me. He promised her an honest life, one I couldn't give her." At 6:15 p.m., as the sun began to set behind the trees, Erwin finally agreed to let the children go. Sammy and Emily woke up frightened, but unharmed. They were taken away in ambulances. Left alone, Erwin hung his head. "I'm ready to give up," he said. "But first, tell me the truth. Did she ever love me, or was I just entertainment?" Harris thought about what Gerald had told him about the complexity of the relationship that had led to the tragedy. "I think she loved you both in her own way. She just didn't know how to deal with it." Erwin nodded and put the gun on the floor. The officers immediately entered and arrested him. The wound on his leg required medical attention, but his life was not in danger. A week later, Erwin Miller was formally charged with first-degree murder. His lawyer tried to prove that the crime was committed in the heat of the moment, but Gerald's testimony and the evidence found pointed to premeditation. Jane Miller filed for divorce and was granted full custody of the children. The auto repair shop was sold to cover legal fees and provide for the family. Gerald Wilson took 2 months off work after the events. The psychological trauma of losing Maria and participating in the shootout required time to recover. When he returned to duty, he became even more committed to the ideals of justice, but lost his former optimism about human nature. Maria Sanchez's funeral was held in a small Catholic church on the outskirts of Muskegon. Colleagues from the hospital, a few friends, and her sister from Chicago attended. Neither Gerald nor Jane were present. The pain was too fresh. Detective Harris closed the case a month after Irwin's arrest. In his report, he wrote, "The crime was the result of a complex web of lies, passion, and emotional instability. The victim led a double life, which ultimately led to tragic consequences for all involved." Muskegon gradually forgot about the story. New crimes and scandals captured the attention of the townspeople, but those who were close to the participants in the tragedy remembered the lesson about how dangerous it is to play with people's feelings and how high the price of lies can be. Maria Sanchez tried to balance between two worlds, but in the end, she was crushed by the weight of her own secrets. Her story became a warning that even the most carefully planned deceptions sooner or later lead to ruin. In a Michigan state prison, Irwin Miller is serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Sometimes he receives letters from children who are slowly beginning to understand what happened to their family. He never responds to these letters, knowing he does not deserve forgiveness. The story of love, lies, and murder in Muskegon has ended, but its echoes continue to resonate in the hearts of those who survived.